She says the American dream is becoming an American nightmare and that our great country is in danger of becoming a third world nation. Please welcome syndicated columnist and the author of the brand new book, Third World America, Arianna Huffington. Arianna, it's good to have you with me today. You talk about in the book the disappearing middle class, that we are losing the middle class in America. It's always been the strength of this country. Why are we losing the middle class?
We are losing the middle class because for years now, we have allowed special interests to buy public policy. We have allowed mortgage companies and credit card companies to hide tricks and traps, inside the contracts.
What about unions? Have they been a part of this, you think?
Well, I think we have allowed basically the absence of social responsibility and also personal responsibility. There is no question that many people bought into the idea that you can have a shortcut to the American dream, no down payment, no proof of income, shortcut, and that's not going to happen. And as an immigrant to this country, this accent is for real. I have...
So is mine, by the way. I just want you to know.
My ex-husband says I still have this accent because I never listen, but that's why he's my ex-husband. So, I lived the American dream. And I remember, growing up in Athens and walking to school every day, passing by the statue of President Truman, who had given Europe the Marshall Plan. That was another sign of a generous, magnificent nation. And when I'm here now and I see friends of mine whose kids are graduating from college and they can't find a job, you have people in their 40s and 50s losing their jobs and not being able to find another one. Upward mobility was at the heart of the American dream. And now we have downward mobility. Governor, there are 100 million people who are now worse off than their parents were at a similar age. Two-thirds of this country believe that their kids are not going to do as well as they are doing. Basically, we went from a country that made things to a country that made things up. CDOs, credit default swaps, toxic derivatives. Wall Street became a casino, and we, the taxpayers, bailed them out. That's where you and I agree.
We do. And in fact, one of the things I found very refreshing in your book draws upon many of the things that I've been saying for quite some time, is that we are eroding the sense of the American dream. We're killing the idea that a person can reach for something. You've lived it, I've lived it. How much of this is because the government has tried to interfere too much and manipulate the economy rather than to allow the marketplace to truly give people the opportunity to create and innovate?
Listen, I believe that private enterprise capitalism is the best system in the world. I studied economics at Cambridge. But the foundation has to be a moral foundation. Capitalism now is no longer a moral enterprise in many instances. You have, for example, short-term profit and greed driving business decisions. That's not going to work in the long term. We saw it didn't even work for the companies like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns that they went under. So we need to recover that moral foundation of capitalism.
But that's not a government program.
No, but government, you see, in the absence of that moral foundation, we need government to make sure that there is enough regulation not to allow what happened to happen, not to allow BP to do what it did that ended in the worst environmental disaster and destroyed the livelihoods of so many people, not to allow the mining industry, for example, to allow people to go down the mines without the proper safety regulations. If people would do that without government, we wouldn't need government. But so often the drive for the short-term profit is making that impossible.
We agree, I believe, on the big problem. We may not completely come to terms on how does government fix it. I totally agree, Arianna, that government should play a role. But when I watch, let's say Barney Frank and Maxine Waters say, oh, there's no problem with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They're just fine. They weren't fine. They were killing the housing industry in this country. That was government failing to regulate, failing to do the one job it had, which was to referee the game.
No, there's no question that Fannie and Fred, incidentally, Fannie and Fred had two agencies regulating them. So the problem there was not absence of regulation. It was just that the regulators were not even doing their job. But right now, if you look at the needs in this country, I have an entire section on our infrastructure, for example. You can't fix the infrastructure of this country without government programs. And yet a lot of the pipes that our water comes from date back to the Civil War. A lot of our